I'm
Okay.
Mahesh Perera. I'm a consultant gynecologist working in Glasgow. I was based at the Glasgow Royal Infirmary and Stobhill, where I ran the menopause clinic, but have just recently retired from the NHS and continue to work at the Glasgow Nuffield, where I run a menopause clinic and a gynecology clinic. So, first, thank you, Rachel and Menopause Cafe, for hosting this and inviting me. It is indeed a pleasure and an honor for me. Uh, you'll have to forgive me because this is all new to me. Uh, Thanks, Ian from Airmeet, because this is a fantastic platform you
Mm.
have given us. I also should thank the Nuffield, Glasgow Nuffield, who very kindly publicized this via their various social media uh, uh, outlets.
Yeah.
So let's come to the first question. What is the role of testosterone in the management of menopause? Now, this is controversial because at the moment we don't have a testosterone preparation that is licensed for use in women in the UK. This is my personal view. My personal view is that testosterone has uh, a major benefit in managing the menopause. It is thought that both in men and women, the sex drive, the libido, is because of testosterone. And in women, half the testosterone is produced in their ovaries. When one goes through the menopause, obviously the testosterone is halved. So that may be one of the reasons, but it's not. I don't think it's as simple and straightforward. It's multifactorial. Now, what I tend to testosterone also has an effect on general well-being, on energy levels, and things like that. Now, it is not recommended officially by the various menopause organizations to give prescribed testosterone for this reason, although they support the administration of testosterone in for sexual dysfunction. Anecdotally, I have noticed in my patients giving them testosterone does help their energy levels. What I tend to prescribe testosterone is in the form of a gel. There are various gels you can. The one I tend to use is Tostrem because it's easy. You use one measure a day, and I say Monday to Friday every week. The weekend is off. Uh, we can use testosterone implants. It is available both in the NHS and at the Nuffield. We have testosterone implants, which is an implant you give a local anesthetic to the tummy and make a tiny cut and insert an implant underneath the skin. Uh, that lasts for 6 months. Do you need blood tests? Yes, it may be worthwhile doing a blood test to check the testosterone levels to make sure one doesn't get too much testosterone. Obviously, the downside of testosterone is you'll end up with a beard like me if you take too much of it. Uh, but at the dose I suggested, I have not yet come across anyone having a problem. I had one patient who it helped a lot, but she found that her acne was getting worse. So, what she did was she used it on alternate days and found that helped her libido and didn't have a problem with acne. So I think that's about all I have to say about testosterone. Is there anything else in particular, Rachel, you want to ask me about that?
Somebody's written in the comments section. This is Natalie, who's from the States. She says testosterone can be found in most gyms. Men take it. Why can't women get it too? I don't know if you have an answer for that.
Yeah, the preparation in the gyms, I don't know enough. If you could see me, you will understand I'm not a person who frequents
Goes to
the
the gym.
gym.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, you're right. It can be obtained, and there is no reason why women can't take it. But we are talking about a pharmacological, drug that needs to go through. In the US, it would be FDA, and in the UK, the various uh, uh, regulatory agencies that have to license it.
Yeah.
So we don't have that here. So the testosterone found in gyms, I would have thought, is not medically licensed ones.
Yeah. Thank you.
I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, and there's one other comment saying, is testosterone only available by private consultation? But I think you just said that testosterone implants can be obtained on the NHS as well as private.
Yes,
isn't that right?
and it can be obtained on the NHS, a testosterone prescription.
Right.
The problem is whether GPs are confident enough to prescribe it. I think that's where the problem is. I have only on a handful of times had problems where a GP has not agreed to prescribe testosterone based on my advice, where I would give a note to the patient to take to a GP.
Right.
And then there is no option but a private prescription.
Okay, I think we'll move on to the next question, Mahesh. And Dinah, maybe if you could delete the question that's been answered so that it moves off my screen. So the next one is, do you think the day will ever come when us ladies can go to the GP and get our hormones back without a fight and without being prescribed antidepressants?
How do I answer that?
Tactfully.
I do hope the day would come. I would have expected the day has come because we shouldn't need to have this. I think there is nothing to stop women going and requesting this. I don't know whether there are any GPs in our audience, so please forgive me for this next comment. But I think what has happened is GPs have lost the confidence of prescribing HRT because they have been out of prescribing it for some time. And there is now a new demand for it. I think that has to be addressed with the GP training colleges and the whole training, that this needs to be looked at.
Sure.
I frequently speak to GPs in postgraduate education sessions, part of educating.
Thank you. I've just realized time is running away from us, so I'm going to interrupt you and ask the next one. But just to tell the audience, Mahesh has kindly said he will stay on until 8:15, just so we can get through more of the questions. So the next one is it useful to have a blood test for menopause?
Right. That's a very good question. In a simple answer, no, because I hardly do a blood test to diagnose menopause. The only time I would do a blood test is if there is a very young girl who comes with when I'm suspecting premature ovarian insufficiency. The problem with doing a blood test in the perimenopausal woman is that if the blood test comes back as normal, It is just, all it's saying is at that moment of time when the blood test was taken, her ovaries were functioning and the hormones were normal. It doesn't say that was the case 5 minutes or an hour before or 2 hours later. So I would much prefer going on symptoms, uh, and treat the symptoms and see the response. Occasionally, I do blood tests if, in spite of treatment, if I find that it's difficult to get symptoms under control, just to check that the absorption is okay. And then there is a point to check estradiol levels, uh, or even testosterone levels, as I told you before. But by and large, doing a blood test for the menopause is not of great value.
Thank you for explaining that. That's quite a common question. But yes, it's not much good because it varies from day to day. Now, the next one's from Victoria Burns. Victoria, do you want to say your question out loud? Karen and Ian, I don't know if you can invite Victoria onto the stage, or I can just call it out, Victoria, if you'd rather not. Okay. Right, it's just appeared on the stage. There we go. What natural or alternative treatments have you found helpful for menopause symptoms? So by natural, because of course hormones are natural, I'm guessing Victoria means treatments other than HRT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of evidence about this. Now, there is some evidence to say that clonidine, antidepressants, the SSRIs, gabapentin, which is also used for chronic pain, can be effective. I use these in women who shouldn't be on HRT. Say if someone has breast cancer and has bad symptoms of flushes and sweats. Other than that, black cohosh seems to be effective. There was a lot of work done to see why is it that Japanese women who live in Japan seems to have less problems with menopause symptoms. And then this theory came that it is because their diet is high in soya, which has natural estrogen. So uh, the isoflavins and things may be useful, but to be of real benefit, you can't take a slice of soya bread. You will have to take a bucket load. You know, the Japanese diet is full of soya in it. So it's not as though taking an occasional slice of soya bread is going to help. What worries me with some of the natural products is that if it is effective, then it has a degree of estrogenic effect. And some women, for one reason or another, who shouldn't be on HRT, feel taking a natural remedy is safe. I just worry about that. Because if it is having an estrogenic effect, then if they shouldn't be on estrogen, should they be on this? That's about all. I mean, other things like reflexology, meditation, all of these have uh, been shown to help in some cases. I've had a couple of patients who use a magnet that has helped. I have nothing strongly against any of these because a magnet, homeopathy, if they are effective, then it's fine. The problem is, as earlier patient said, going to a doctor and being given antidepressant instead of HRT when one could be on HRT. That's where the problem comes, I feel.
Thank you. So just to check, I've got that and the others. Antidepressants can help with vasomotor, with hot flushes. I said HRT is should be the first offer of choice.
Definitely.
Only if HRT isn't suitable, then antidepressants.
Yeah, and remember the antidepressants, clonidine and gabapentin all have what we call anticholinergic effects, which in turn has a detrimental effect on the sex drive. So that side of it would get worse.
Thank you. Yeah, useful to remember that that's a side effect. And the other three things that can help naturally, I believe, are healthier eating and diet and exercise. And although it seems very hard to do, if we could be less stressed, then we might sleep better, and that can also help because stress can make the hot flushes worse. So anything we can learn on healthy eating, exercise, and relaxing.
Definitely.
Okay, the next one up is if you're taking the combined pill, would this mask perimenopause? Are there any downsides to continuing to take the pill to help with premenstrual symptoms, sleep, migraine, anxiety? At what point would switching to HRT be advised? So at least two questions inside there, Mahesh.
Yeah. So yes, if you are on the combined contraceptive pill, just by the mere fact that you're on a estrogen, it may mask. It may not give you the same flushes and sweats. So that's a point. We are not as strict with the combined pill as we were in the past, with a strict age limit where you have to come off it. Now, if there are no other risk factors, then there is no reason why a woman in her 40s can't be on a low dose combined pill. Now, the other part of that question, if I remember right, was when can I come off it? Am I right, Rachel?
It disappeared, so let me just have a look. I think that was one submitted earlier, so I've got it somewhere. Hold on a moment. If you're taking the combined pill with this mask perimenopause, and I think you said it might because there's estrogen in the pill, are there any downsides that with it to continuing to take the pill to help with PMS symptoms? And
not really. I don't think there are any downsides, except as one gets older, if there are any other risk factors for being on the pill, then that's the downside.
Okay. And at what point would switching to HRT be advised? So that implies that they're mutually exclusive. You wouldn't take both at the same
time. That's a difficult one to answer, because if you need contraception, remember HRT is not contraceptive.
Good point.
So you need to be on a reliable contraception. The most straightforward is to come off everything, see what happens, and then start afresh. One way around this is if you use something like the Mirena, an intrauterine coil that has progestogen, then use that as the contraceptive and see what happens with your symptoms. And if you are starting to get menopause or perimenopausal symptoms, then you could very easily add in some estrogen. And that is the best transition.
Okay, so to switch to the Mirena coil for the contraceptive effect, which allows you, and then see what the menopause symptoms are, because the Mirena coil has some of the progesterone in it, which might help with the symptoms. Switch to the coil and then take HRT if
there are newer coils called Kylena and Jades that also have the hormone, but we don't have a license to using those for what we call endometrial protection, i.e. to protect the lining of the womb.
Right.
So we don't know whether the progestogen in it is enough to prevent any precancerous changes happening in the lining of the womb by just someone being only on estrogen. Does that make sense?
Not quite, but that's partly because I was trying to tackle the questions at the same time. Could you say that last bit again, Mahesh, and then I'll go for the next
Yeah.
question.
So
Let me.
there are newer coils like the Marina called Kylina, Jades, and things like that, but they are not licensed to be used for HRT because we don't have the data to show that they protect the lining of the womb enough against having estrogen.
Right.
If
Yes,
you give estrogen without a progestogen, then you can get precancerous changes in the lining of the womb. That's why it's vital to have a progestogen.
that's except for people whose wombs have been removed. They can take
Yeah,
the
obviously, yeah.
safely. Thank you. Okay, just to remind the audience that you can upvote, so vote for the questions that you are most interested in. If you scroll down the questions in the Q&A tab like we showed you earlier, if there's one that you like, hover over the up button, the up arrow, and it will move it to the top. So Mary Rice's question is now at the top. Mary, I'm just going to call your question out if that's okay, which is, are joint pains a symptom of perimenopause, and would HRT help?
Okay. Yes, it is definitely a symptom of the perimenopause and the menopause. I saying that I don't think any rheumatologist would agree that HRT is a treatment for this.
Right.
Anecdotally, it's quite interesting. I had a patient who was a physiotherapist when I was working in the NHS, and I used to give her an estradiol implant, and she knew when she needed one because her fingers would stiffen up and she couldn't do her job. So every time she felt that was happening, not more frequently than once in 6 months, she would let me know and I would arrange to see her in my clinic and give her estrogen implant and things. Well, and that was the only symptom of the menopause she had. She had no flushes, no sweats, nothing else. So, yes, it does help,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not that HRT is your first line treatment for joint pains and joint problems.
No, because I imagine they might be due to something else as well, and it's figuring
Yeah.
out what the cause is. Thank you. Okay. Now, I've been on HRT now for about 4 years. I'm nervous about coming off them, as I did start to reduce to missing 1 or 2 a week, and the night sweats started to return. Is there any danger on me staying on HRT for longer? And what are the risks of taking it into my 50s, 60s, and 70s?
I think this is a good question.
Common one.
Uh, and whenever I start a patient on HRT, I try and remember to tell them that all we are doing is tricking the body to thinking you're still producing the hormones. So
Mhm.
anytime you come off it, whether you are in your 50s, 60s, 70s, when you come off it, you are going to get the symptoms for a variable period of time till the body adjusts.
Right.
So that's the first thing to remember. And when you're coming off it, to make sure you don't come off it at a stressful time in your life where you have to juggle other things.
Mhm.
Now, my rule of thumb with risks of HRT, this is a very rough thing. Under the age of 55, if you're looking purely at clinical risk, for not that I don't think quality of life is important, but not taking that into account,
Right.
the clinical benefits of HRT outweigh the risks under 55. Between 55 and 60, they're neutral.
Right.
Over the age of 60, if you're looking purely at clinical risk, now we are talking about increased risk of breast cancer, of clots in the leg or DVT, and
Mhm.
things like that. then those risks start to slightly increase. But the increase of risk is very, very small, and that's what people need to remember. Now, just to give you some figures, the risk of breast cancer, if someone is continuously on HRT for over 5 years after their late 50s, there'll be 2 extra cases of breast cancer in 1,000 women. And if they're on it for 10, there'll be 6 extra cases.
Mhm.
As far as clots in the leg, you could frighten someone and say you double your risk, or you could say the normal background risk is about 2.5 in 10,000 women. And if you're on HRT, you increase it to 5. Very
Yeah.
small real numbers, but it depends how you tell that. There is also no evidence that HRT through the skin increases risk of clots. So if someone is particularly worried about that, I would suggest using a transdermal HRT regime.
Great, like a patch or a
Yeah,
gel. So that kind of HRT doesn't give an increased risk of clots.
yeah,
In general, it sounds like it's a question of weighing the risks as we get older.
exactly. It's weighing the risks and having a conversation with your GP, uh, and accepting those risks,
Mhm.
and saying, yes, no, this has helped. I mean, I'm sure Rachel has heard me telling this before. I had a patient in her 80s who the GP wasn't willing to prescribe HRT until she sees me every 6 months. And every 6 months, she'll come to my clinic and we'll go through this. And this lady this was pre COVID era,
Mhm.
used to go twice a year deep sea diving. She
Oh,
had
yeah.
to go to warm waters, so she had long distances to fly.
Mhm.
And she keeps asking me, Dr. Pereira, how long do you want me to live? I have a good quality of life, so I want to continue on this.
Yeah,
So one can't argue with that kind of logic.
I think
So,
that's why it's so individual for us
yeah,
to either weigh up the risks or weigh up the quality of life.
exactly.
Okay. And many people take the combined pill, which is hormones that we put into our
Yeah,
body, and they weigh up the risks of that. I think
yeah.
we've all got a lot more scared of HRT. Okay, just to let everyone know, somebody has kindly posted in the chat how you can scroll down the questions, because some of you were having trouble scrolling down the questions. Um, Click on the lowermost question you can see, the one at the bottom. If you click on that and then press the down arrow on your keyboard, that might help you scroll down. It certainly works for me, whereas I think other people have a bar they can scroll up and down. So if you need to scroll down, click on the lowermost question and then press the down arrow. Nicola's question has risen to the top. And Nicola's saying, I'm struggling with terrible energy levels. Any key things my GP and I should be looking at? Mahesh.
Right. That's a difficult one. I mean, uh, I think an important thing is to make sure that her thyroid function is fine, because it's well known if your thyroid gland is underactive, your energy levels go down. So make sure that you're uh, producing enough thyroxine.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, yes, the perimenopause has that effect, uh, and whether getting some testosterone would help or not, but you're going to find it very difficult to convince a GP to prescribe testosterone for that reason. But I think the important thing is to make sure there is nothing else that's causing these energy levels to go down. Uh, the other thing is looking at what other medication one is on. There is lots of medications, especially the antidepressants, very often people may be on, can also reduce the energy levels. So just looking at that, all the medication together. Certain cardiovascular blood pressure medications, the beta blockers, have an effect of reducing energy. So uh, to look at the total picture here.
Great, thank you. And that leads nicely into the next question, which was submitted earlier. When going through menopausal symptoms, I also have an underactive thyroid. Hormones are all colliding. What's the best suggested course of action to review my needs and alleviate my symptoms? So somebody who knows they've got an underactive thyroid is going through menopause.
The first thing is to make sure that the underactive thyroid is treated. There is a lot of debate in the medical literature about how accurate your thyroid function tests are at detecting subclinical low thyroid levels, and whether giving a slightly higher dose of thyroxine is helpful or not. But the important thing is to treat the underactive thyroid first, and then treat the menopause, and they are treated independently, I would think.
Right.
I know the question talks about all the hormones colliding, but these between the thyroid hormones and menopausal hormones, I think you just have to treat them independently.
Okay, thank you. So to treat them separately. I know that comes up a lot at the Menopause Cafe, the thyroid. Okay, the next one is from Cecile, who's saying, is 59 too late to go on HRT? That maybe ties in with the previous question. I've only been menopausal for the last 18 months. The GP says I've already had an extra 10 years protection from estrogen and will have monthly bleeding for another 4 years. So I'm just surprised the GP can say, if I take HRT, and I should look for homeopathic remedies first.
Right. So a quick, easy answer to that is 59 doesn't mean you can't go on HRT. So that's very straightforward. I don't particularly see a reason why she needs to have a monthly bleed. Now, I feel if someone is still having uh, bleeding at the age of 59, I would think that needs to be investigated, because it's not totally unheard of to have periods going on late. But if you think that the average age of the menopause in UK is 52, to have a woman still having periods at the age of 59, then you need to check, are they really regular periods? Is there something, some pathology happening in the womb rather than this is physiological? So I think that needs to be excluded. And thereafter, being on a continuous combined HRT regime that shouldn't give her periods at that age or give bleeding would be sensible.
Great, thank you. We've got a few minutes left, so I'm just going to pick. There's one that says, I've been told that because I have fibroids, I should not take HRT. Do you agree?
No, I don't agree.
That's why I thought I'd get that one in. That could be a quick answer. Right. If you want to say
I don't agree at all. But I can see the reasoning, because fibroids are hormone dependent. We know that women who have fibroids after the menopause, they shrink. When we want to operate on very large fibroids, what we do is we make women medically menopausal by giving them an injection to shrink the fibroids. So based on that, yes, taking estrogen can increase the size, but really it doesn't increase it to that extent on the dose of HRT. So having fibroids particularly is not a reason that you can't be on HRT.
Okay, thank you for that. And someone said, will menopause have any other effects on a women with polycystic ovary syndrome? And if so, could you please have some content on this matter during the session?
Okay.
So is it any different for women with PCOS?
Yeah. So, interesting question. If at all, HRT would be more beneficial for women with PCOS. Women with, for those of you who are not fully aware of PCOS, it's a hormonal imbalance that happens where you get excess amounts of androgens, the male hormone testosterone, and so there is facial hair, period irregularity or infrequency, problems getting pregnant because they don't ovulate regularly. They also have other metabolic problems. They run a higher risk of cardiovascular problems, higher risk of type 2 diabetes because there is a tendency to get what you call insulin resistance. Now, all of these have been shown, HRT have been all to be beneficial in type 2 diabetes, reducing cardiovascular risk, especially in the early menopause.
Right.
So, therefore, women with PCOS, I think there is a place for them, particularly to be on HRT.
Thank you.
The only other thing that I would just be a bit cautious is women with PCOS tend to still carry, after the menopause, carry on having high androgen levels sometimes. And when you're getting your HRT, it depends on the progestogen that's given. There are certain progestogens that we call are androgenic, that are derived from testosterone. So things like noetestrone, levonorgestrel. So it may be worthwhile the HRT regime not having these as the progestogen, because one of the other symptoms of the perimenopause is thinning of hair. And if
demonstrate that.
I can show that myself.
That's not due to menopause, is it?
Reason. But so just to avoid those preparations, but that's just finer print.
Okay, Mahesh, it's 1:15, so I know you need to go now. Thank you very much for your time. I will linger and give the question to the political question there, which I think I can answer. But just to say thank you again for coming. I was too distracted at the beginning. You're welcome. Mahesh and I have known each other since we were students, which is why I'm a bit more informal and using his first name. Because I remember when we both had a lot more hair than we do at the moment. And so feel free to head off, Mahesh, while I thank the sponsors and give other people and tell what's happening next, because I know you have a family occasion to be at. But that was really useful. And if you like me are wondering how to leave, Mahesh, I think it's the back arrow in the top left-hand corner.
I just thought I will put in a contact email for me.
Thank you.
If there's anyone who wants to email me, but I'm not very good at immediate reply. So if you haven't heard from me, just feel free to drop me a reminder and ask me if there's any particular questions. Or Dina has given a plug for my clinic at the Nuffield as well. Thank you, Dina.
Oh, well, so Mahesh shared his personal email address with all of you. How lucky are we? I can testify that he often takes a long time to reply, but reacts very nicely to gentle reminders. And yes, Dinah has shared, now that Mahesh has retired from the NHS, he works in private practice. And there are lots of thank yous in the chat, Mahesh. I hope you can see them. And people saying how helpful.
You'll carry on with your, and I will just go through the chat. Useful to know.
Yeah, great.
So thanks again, Rachel.
Well, thank you. Absolutely. We're indebted. Well, folks, I don't know about you. I often need to hear those answers several times before they sink in. I'm just going to pick up on Sean's question, since 5 of you were interested in that, and then we can mingle and network in the lounge if you want to. Sean said, what's the situation now in England as to getting a longer term prescription rather than month by month? So you may remember that the Parliament, I think, agreed at the end of last year that in England you would be able to pay for, I think, 2 prescriptions instead of lots. Now, I'm hazy on this because I'm in Scotland, where all our prescriptions are free, and I believe there's no prescription charge in Wales or Northern Ireland. The last I heard about England was they hadn't set a date when this would happen. If anyone knows differently, please type into the chat. But I'd heard that we're still waiting for a date when you in England will be able to just pay for 1 or 2 prescriptions per year for your HRT. But what I do know you can do in England is get a repeat prescription certificate. So you can pay a certain amount, which is perhaps equivalent to 2 or 3 prescriptions, and that covers all your prescriptions for a year. So a repeat prescription certificate has always been available, just people didn't know about it. So yeah, do type into the chat if you have any responses to that question. And we'll have to save the others, I'm afraid, although Alexandra, I think Mahesh answered your question, not quite which is the best form of HRT, but that the transdermal ones, the ones that go through our skin, the gel and the plaster, have less or no risk of blood clots, so they could be seen as safer, because they don't go into your whole system. When we take the tablets, my understanding, I'm not a medic, is the estrogen goes through the whole system of the body rather than just being through the skin. So generally, I believe the transdermal ones are considered safer, but they're also more expensive. So you can imagine, if you're a GP with a limited budget, do you give lots of women the transdermal HRT or just a few of them the tablets? And that's not an easy choice to make. Okay, so just to thank Global Media, Johnson Media, who have given us this for free. They are behind the scenes, Karen and Ian, doing all of the techie stuff for us without charging us, because they believe in you needing to know more about the menopause. So I want a big round of applause, except I don't think you can do applause on this platform. But oh, you can, clever people, you figured it out, and I didn't know how you could. So look at that, Karen and Ian, thank you so much for giving us this for free so we didn't have to charge for it. You're getting lots of hands on. Oh yes, I think I can see her. I think it's a smiley face at the bottom. So that's a big thank you. I'm just going to share a few slides. Ian, could you pop up the Flushfest poster so I can tell people about when they can do something like this again? So Karen or Ian, the Flushfest poster, please. Lovely. We're having a menopause festival on June the 17th and 18th. And one of the speakers there will be Mr. Haitham Hamoda, who's the chair of the British Menopause Society. He'll be talking for longer than this. We've got a whole hour of him speaking on the important stuff about menopause, followed by half an hour of questions. So that's an hour of the chair of the British Menopause Society speaking on menopause, followed by half an hour questions. And that's just one part of Saturday morning. You also get Kirsty Walk talking about her menopause with a really exciting guest that I'm thrilled about, but I'm not allowed to tell you who it is yet. And that Saturday afternoon, June the 18th, there are a whole load of creative workshops: poetry, sex and the menopause and work, painting your vulva, not your actual vulvas, painting pictures of vulvas, all sorts of things. And there's a comedy night on the Friday night. So to find out more about Flushfest, just go to our website, which I'm sure Dinah can put in the chat. Now, just some instructions if you want to mingle after this. So our charity is Menopause Cafe Charity, and we will send you an email after this with links for Flushfest and also a link if you want to make a donation. Please don't feel obliged to make a donation. Our whole ethos is people who can afford to pay give us a donation, and that enables us to keep our events free or low cost, so that price is not a barrier for anyone. So no obligation at all. We will send you a donation link, but please only if you can afford it, because everything is getting so expensive. We really hope to do this again. That's our plan. And if we do it again, we will let you know in our newsletter. So sign up for our newsletter or follow us on social media and we'll post the event. I need to catch Mahesh and say, that was fun. You want to do this again, don't you? Or we've got another Meno specialist, Dr. Laura Jarvis, who's one of our friends of the charity too, and I'm sure she'll do it. So thank you for all your love hearts. That's really encouraging. And I hope to see some of you in the lounge at the tables. after this. Bye-bye for now.